Well, hi, and welcome to the Christian Contrast podcast, where we talk about how walking with Jesus leads us to live differently than the world around us. And I'm here with some of my favorite people, Dalton and Sweaney, who are hugely involved here at Life Bible Fellowship Church. And we're going to end up having a conversation about creating a Christ-centered family culture and just what that looks like. But to start off, why don't you guys just kind of introduce yourselves and don't talk about every way that you're involved in the church, because it would be forever, but maybe just talk a little bit about some of the ways that you've been involved here at Life Bible Fellowship Church.
Sure. So we're the Sweeneys, family of 6. We've got twin girls that are 6, and then boys that are 3 and 2. I'm currently an elder here. We lead a life group. I'll leave it at that, and then we can
fill in some others.
Yeah, I help out with Mom to Mom, and I help with the Life Kids ministry too on Sundays. So I think that's a little bit of it.
Yeah. When we talk about this, when we talk about just the concept of trying to have a Christ-centered family culture, obviously you guys are looking to live this out as a family with young kids. I know this has also been something on your guys' hearts just with the life group that you lead for years, that you've been trying to cultivate this across families, that you're in this together. And so, I know like Christ-centered family culture, that's not a phrase in the Bible, that's something we're using to encapsulate things. But as you hear that, just what are some things that come to your mind that are maybe different than just, here are 6 tasks that we do, but trying to create a family culture where Jesus is at the center of family life?
Yeah, I mean, so it starts with everything we do, we want to point to Jesus. And there's different areas of our lives where that looks differently. But trying to first and foremost make sure that Sunday mornings and being at church and involved with church and using our gifts for church, that all of that is paramount in what we do throughout the week. And it overflows into every other area of life if you structure it that way. And so we've kind of structured some things and try to create some spaces that point that way. But Allie, if you want to talk about maybe some of the specifics that we do.
Well, I think if you're talking structure versus like a culture, structure to me seems something that tries to make your job easier, and you're trying to do things that kind of make it more comfortable. And I think if you're trying to create a culture centered around Christ, like it's not going to be comfortable and it's not going to be easy. So even though you might be using structures to do that, I don't think it necessarily means it's going to make it easy.
Yeah.
I think it means more of Jesus generally makes things harder and uncomfortable.
Which is a good point to bring up. And even that, and I don't know if this is exactly what you were saying, but sort of that structure is meant to serve.
Yes.
Structure is meant to facilitate that culture. Structure is not the ultimate end, and you guys are in the young kid. I mean, younger than my kids. So I still say young kids, but just where, there is a lot of talk about structure and how important and all of those different things. And there's an opportunity within that structure to form. And I'd love just to, maybe that's a little bit of a starting point, is to say, we have an opportunity with structure to have our structure serve our goals of having a Christ-centered family culture, or to have our structure form sort of an obstacle to us trying to get there. And so, Dalton, I know you alluded to it, but what have been some things, just as we start to try to get our minds around this, that you guys have looked to do structure-wise to say, how do we set up a structure that doesn't make this harder, but sort of facilitates this goal of putting Jesus at the center?
Yeah, so I mean, the most important one is consistent Sunday service, being involved in church, and being committed to church, and making it fun and making it a highlight. And our kids love coming to church on Sunday, and so that's first and foremost. And then the second thing is within our life group ministry is doing life with these families. Surrounding ourselves with families that love Jesus. Knowing that their parenting and everything that they're doing throughout the week is also pointing towards Jesus, so that their conversations they're having with their friends, I'm talking about our kids, the conversations our kids are having with their friends, while we're all still fallen and fall short of the mark, at least we have that same framework of what we're talking about for different topics or whatever. We have that same starting point. As Jesus. I think those are probably the first big two. And then we do things that Allie's really good with, like verse memorization with the kids in the morning. We do homeschool, so it gives us that advantage that we can kind of cater towards implementing those things throughout curriculum and that kind of stuff. So that's another thing where we can incorporate the Bible within everything that she does teaching wise. What are some other things that we do?
Who knows? No, I think we're really intentional about valuing things that God values. So when we're trying to think through the things that we want to do with our kids, we say, okay, the Lord values worship, so we need to make sure like we are valuing the church, we're valuing our daily worship with him and God's word. More specifics, like you said, is we do a lot of verse memory and lots of Bible songs, because that seems with our age group with my kids, that seems to work the best. And I'm not saying it's always perfect and that we're all sitting around the table at breakfast doing this. Like this morning when we did it, it was my youngest son was playing with an obnoxious toy, like off to the side. The middle son's sitting on my lap because he wants to eat his breakfast that way. And my girls are wanting more food, but we still get through the whole thing and they enjoy it. I think that's important too. And I think, like you said, doing life with others that are on a similar mindset and not necessarily the same like family setup dynamic of the sense of like we're homeschooling our kids. I'm home with the kids. We also have really good friends that both parents work. Their kids are at public school, but they do a really great job of this as well. It just looks different.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and I love that you guys talked about that, because there can be, I think, there can be this loneliness that can come in. Yeah, I mean, you already alluded to it. Like following Jesus does not make your life sort of like the path of least resistance. No. Anyway, and so if you're looking to really do family in this way, it's going to be countercultural, and you can feel like we are the only ones doing this. So having friends, even if their setup is different, that, you know, hey, we're going for the same thing, we're trying to figure this out, is so huge. Yeah. Just not to feel like we're the only ones we know trying to do this.
Yeah.
And I also love, you know, one of the things Karina, there's this G.K. Chesterton quote that says, if a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing badly.
It's true.
And she loves it, you know, and people have a hard time understanding, but it's the idea of saying, okay, this isn't going to be perfect. You know, like sometimes it is going to be, you know, not as consistent, and we say we're doing this once a day, but we're not actually. Like a couple weeks ago, we sat down at the dinner table, and we had this sort of system set up where, you know, I my kids are older than you guys, and so with my two teenagers, and then with me and Karina, where Monday through Thursday we rotated that each one of us on a different day would be reading a portion of the Bible reading for that day and just bringing a thought on it. And I realized, you know, because of, you know, maybe like some different things that came up, and, you know, I mean, the loss of Karina's mom kind of threw our family into some irregularity. And I just sort of sat down, and I felt a little bit embarrassed, but I was like, okay, it's been a while since we've done this.
Right.
And we sort of regrouped and said, let's do it again. Like, let's, you know, all right, you still good with Mondays, you know? And it was that there was a part of me that wanted to not bring it up, because I was sort of like, I said we were going to do this, and it's kind of my fault that we haven't. But being able to say, all right, we're going to do this. It's not going to be perfect. Sometimes it's going to be ugly, but we're looking to do something instead of feeling like it's an all or nothing thing. Yeah. And I think that is so much of parenting.
Totally. And modeling that for your kids, you know, like, hey, we set out to do this. We kind of sludged through it. We lost our way a bit, but we're turning back to it. You know, we don't have to do this perfectly for it to work. You know, there is value in continuing to go about it, right? It's the same thing with our struggles with sin. Yeah. You know, we're going at it. I missed the mark. Man, I miss the mark again and again and again. But I want to keep hitting the mark, right? I'm continuing to try to hit the mark. So I think there's value in owning up to our shortcomings and modeling that for them. And I mean, we joke with our oldest daughter, Abigail. I'll pick on her, and she'll get upset about something, and we'll say, "Oh, that's right, because the Bible says if you don't do everything perfectly, and you have to be perfect." And we say, and she's like, "It doesn't say that." You're like, "Are you sure?" I'm pretty sure it says you have to be perfect.
By the way you're behaving, it seems like it must be
right?
in there.
It must be true that you have to be perfect, and it doesn't work if you're not. But so being able to model that and make sure they realize I don't have to be perfect. Only one has to be perfect, and he was, and it's okay. So modeling that for them is good.
Yeah. When even talking about that, you know, and again, you guys alluded to it a little bit, which I appreciated. And, you know, Allie, you were talking, hey, worship is important. That, you know, these things are important. If we're talking about this, that there's there's different things that we're really wanting our kids to own, like really to embrace at a deep level. And you guys talked about, church involvement, which, I mean, I'm a pastor, so everybody knows what I'm going to say about this, but I think is so key for us to say, all right, our relationship with the Lord is more than just church, but it's not less. Like it's a huge part of what we do. But what would you guys say are some other things that you would say are either sort of like family mantras or just lessons that you're like, we really, really want, like whether we're disciplining them or teaching them or whatever it is, we really want them to get this out of our home.
I think something we say to our kids every single night is, Mommy and Daddy love you no matter what good things you do and no matter what bad things you do. And we followed up with like, who else loves you like that?
Yeah.
And they've heard it so many times, like God. I was like, yes, and he loves you even more than we do. And I think that's been our number one thing, especially in this little stage, is that they know like, hey, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what it is, like we're going to love you. And because of how God made you and who you are, and that's not going to change. I think that we've been really intentional about that.
Yeah, and even this week too, we were commenting to our kids that no matter what you do, no matter what, if you have a career, if you're successful at sports, you make $1 million, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. If you end up loving Jesus and giving him your life, we did a good job. And that is our sole mark. So we were talking to them this week about that. I couldn't tell you what sparked it, but we made sure they knew, like, no, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're a doctor, a lawyer. I don't care. I don't care if whatever job you have, if you love Jesus, then we did it right.
And we've talked about it this week when we were kind of preparing for this. We're like, in our home, like we treat Jesus as the best thing. Like he is the best thing in the whole world. And we try and do that in our home and make it fun because he is fun, right? And like there's joy in that. And so we've been trying to be intentional about that as well. Yeah.
I think that's huge. I mean, like there's a lot of people that when they grow up, or maybe even when they're still, kids, that they'll say like, oh, Dad always said this, or Mom always, like my parents always said this. And I realized partway into parenting, because I don't know if you guys dealt with this, like there were things that when I was probably a teenager and maybe even to my early 20s, I was like, I'm not going to be like, my parents, and I'm not going to be like, my friends' parents, like, and there's just, for me, there was something very humbling about being like, I'm not any better than anyone else. I'm, if you had a real dysfunction in your home and you're looking to break that, that's different than what I'm talking about, which is just that I was like, I frequently have told my kids, do it because I told you so, which I swore I would never say.
Guilty as well.
but there is also something about saying like, all right, like we could look at it as something bad. The kids roll their eyes and they're like, ugh, Mom would always say this. But we're like, all right, if our kids are going to say that about something, what do we want them to say that about? And to be like, every night Mom and Dad would say, I love you no matter what you do. Good. It's like, well, that's a pretty good thing right there. And I frequently think about that. And I know for me, and you guys can talk about sort of, and as kids get older and are younger and older, it is different. But something that Karina and I don't think at any point we sort of formally decided this, but we just noticed is, man, dinner time and bedtime are huge for these different things. And we're, we joke, we're like, we're not good at the big special events. We're good at sort of like the daily grind. So we set up pretty good ruts for ourselves that we like, that we can live in. And we've just discovered, man, there are things with dinner time, and we do. We still are eating dinner more than a lot of the peers that I have. But it gets harder as the kids get older. But still, just the idea of sitting down at dinner, and we have a few games that I don't know if we call them games, but we do our Bible reading now all the time, consistently. Always. No, I'm just kidding. But Jack wow. Last night got out Romans 3 and read part of it and talked about it, and it was wonderful. But there's one of two tricks that I frequently will bring out, and I'll either say, let's do questions, and that just involves, Jack will start and he'll ask Matt a question. Matt, if you were on a desert island and you could only bring one food, what would it be? And Matt answers, and then Matt will ask Karina, what 3 books, would you want to recommend it, and it goes, and sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's meaningful. But actually the one that I do more frequently is I say, let's give compliments. and we do the same thing where we just kind of ping pong around the table. And I've been shocked with, especially with my sons, with being like, wow, you had a really meaningful compliment underneath there for your brother where it might not have come out. And so we've done that. I mean, bedtime with prayer, like you guys talked about, sometimes with reading and different things. It's like you have this captive audience. Suddenly your kid wants to talk to you. It's like they have you all to themselves. Yeah. So I think things like that, even when we talk about this, because again, it's the structure is not the point, but if we leverage some of those things to feed the whole idea of Jesus being at the center of the culture, can be really meaningful. And just for you guys, I mentioned dinner time and bedtime. Have there ever been other things that you've discovered, like, ooh, here's sort of is like I want everybody to know about this because this is something people don't realize is like a great way to sort of insert some structure into this?
Yeah, I mean, so we did dinner time and bedtime for us as well, are really good ones. I would say we eat dinner together almost every night, apart from tax season, when sometimes I'm home a little later, but I jump in like halfway through.
Right.
And our kids are still young.
And our kids are young, which makes it a lot easier.
As many commitments,
We all pray together, bedtime. One thing that we've added recently is we sing a song of praise before we leave. We all hold hands together. So
like in the morning before you go?
Yeah,
okay.
So before the first person leaves or before we start our day, if I'm working from home, we just take a moment to do that. We didn't do that today. We just got puppies in our defense.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to keep trying.
You got to raise those puppies right.
Yeah, that's right. They're going to start singing too. So that's something that we've added in. We're actually going through this book with our life group, which is Habits of the Household. Is it Justin Whitmell Early? I know the last name's Whitmell Early, 2 words. I think it's Justin.
Yeah, it is.
And it's been awesome. It basically, each chapter is a different part of your day.
The structures.
Yeah, and he gives ideas of how you can basically form habits that point to Jesus within those time frames. So meal time, screen time is one. That's not a time of the day, but it's a thing, right? And how can you use that for good? There's waking, bedtime, all sorts of things. There's one even on marriage, playtime, how that can be good. So that's been nice. We've added little things to our meals, like in the book it talks about this, and we've done it because for little kids it's really fun. You light a candle to start the meal, and then whoever we ask one of our kids to pray over our meal. Peter just says, "Dear God, thank you, food, amen," which is enough, right?
That's good.
2. And it's kind of almost English. And then whoever prays gets to blow out the candle, which is a highlight for all of our kids. So just kind of adding in a couple of little things that's fun for them, but again, gets them geared towards relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's been that book's been really good. It's been really good. And it's for us, it's written from the perspective of parenting young kids.
Yeah.
So if you've got young kids, I mean, it's phenomenal. And it's been really good. Our life group has loved it. It's been challenging and thought provoking and really practical, which is hard to find.
Oh, that's good. When we post this, I'll look to link to that because you had told me about that. I haven't read it yet, but I did download it.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah, and I think what it does well is it helps you look at the structures you already have, because it's true for us, like you said, bedtime and dinner time, but for me and the kids, it's breakfast time. Just for whatever reason, the kids seem the most calm at that time. Like I'm able to pour into them more there rather than like a lunch or like a nap time or something else when we're just all chaos. Afternoons are chaos. Morning seems to work better. And so it just helps you see, like, you already have these things in place. Like, how can you make it more towards what God is calling us to do? Yeah.
Well, one question, we didn't really talk about this, although I think we alluded to different things. There are obviously obstacles to doing this, and whether it's busyness or whether it's, you just don't know how to. I just think, there's probably people listening to this right now thinking, I'm not doing anything but wanting to. What would be some thoughts that you two would have just in saying, like, what would it look like just to sort of take a first step into this, to say, okay, it's not going to go from 0 to you're exactly where you want to be, but just to say, how would you take a first step into trying to create this family culture?
Yeah, I think for us the first one is church. Coming Sunday consistently and serving within that, not coming just to listen and be there, but coming to participate and be involved in taking on the responsibility of leading your family in that and showing the value of that. That alone can make a huge difference. So if you're not doing that would be the first one. And then the second one I would say is to surround yourselves with a community that loves Jesus. That would be number 2. And if you've got both of those knocked out, then it's, okay, what can we start doing just us within our family unit that points towards Jesus? And it could be something like a mealtime devotion, or it could be something, bedtime prayers, whatever it is. And I would say to approach it with the mindset that it's going to be messy and you'll probably fail more often than you succeed.
True.
And that's okay, and your kids will see that, but you modeling that failure and continuing to go after it is only going to pay dividends, because nothing in life is easy. Nothing worthwhile is easy.
Yeah.
And so failure is good, because it means you're trying to improve, and you're trying to get better. So I would just say to keep at it, whatever step that looks like. And it doesn't, I know I think there's this thinking that a family devotion has to be you preaching on Sundays, right? And it so doesn't. There's so many great resources. And even we just did one that led into the 2 weeks of Easter. And I think it was maybe the second or third year we had done it. And our girls are to the age where they're starting to retain some things, but they don't remember it from a year ago by any means. But some of the verses that it led to, they were some of the memory verses that Allie had done with them. And so we were in the middle of a story, and it was like the turning point where but Jesus is going to rise, right? Like that's where we're at. And so we finished up the first verse, and then there was like a little thing, and the book is written, so all you have to do is read it. You don't have to know anything.
Right.
If you can read, you can lead this devotion. So look for those kinds of materials. But our girls, Abigail, she started singing the verse that the book was about to go to. Exact same verse. So it's just, you do these things over and over again, and you don't know how it's going to connect. But if you continue to just point them towards Jesus, their little brains are going to absorb things. And then another thing that this was like I don't even know what to call it. I guess a forming book that we read. It was by Paul David Tripp, and it's called Parenting and 14 Gospel Truths, something or other. Principles, sorry. But that book, while the other book we referenced was very practical and broke it down, this one is it's like an umbrella.
Yeah.
This is how you parent. This is what we're about. We're pointing to Jesus, and just having that philosophy in parenting. And one of the things he says in there is, you're going to do something a million times. In 999,000, whatever the number is, it's not going to land. But ultimately it will.
Yeah.
Eventually it'll land. And my goodness, the day it does, what joy there is in that.
Yeah.
So you do things over and over again. You're leading these devotions. You're praying for them. You're like, I am hitting a wall. Like, this is not worth it. It's not working. It is worth it. And it will work.
That's good
you just don't know when. So, and I know for us with the girls more so, we're starting to see some of those things work.
Yeah.
We're starting to see some of the seeds grow and bear fruit. And, so that's been really encouraging. But knowing that from the beginning, I'm going to keep at this, even though it feels fruitless.
Yeah.
It's going to land. It's just going to take time. And we don't know what season it's going to land.
No, that's good.
I love that. I think something I'd add is that being in community with people, but also trying to find people who are maybe just like a little bit ahead of where you are that do this well. So you can see it done in person. Because if you didn't grow up in a Christian home, you didn't grow up around this environment, like a Christ-centered home, like you might not even know what that looks like, right? And so being around people that do that well, there's lots of value to that.
That's good.
Yeah, and we've had that. We've been blessed by that in every stage. When we first got married, we were in a group of families that all had young kids. We didn't have any kids. So we got to show up, and it was easy, and we were newlyweds, and we could see what's this parenting thing all about. But we could see what they did well, what they were struggling with, all of that. We had that modeled. And even still, we've got really good friends that have kids that are your kids' age, being able to watch you guys, the Watsons as well. We're good friends with them, being able to see how they're handling some of the dynamics of parenting older kids. The importance of marriage within all of that. Yeah. And so that's been a huge blessing to see, like, we're here, where are we headed? And what are some of the pitfalls we need to look out for?
Yeah.
That's been a huge blessing.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So what I want to do now is sort of like give you each the last word. And here's how I want to do it. Obviously different people listening are in different places with this. You guys are a mom and a dad dealing with this. And so what I want to ask, well, we'll start ladies first, but just maybe just to speak a little bit specifically to Allie talking about, as a mom, what would be some encouragements you'd give to moms? And then Dalton, as a dad, what would be some unique encouragement that you'd give to dads in all of this?
Oh, man. Okay. I think for moms, it could be very easy to get lost in the mundane things of parenting, especially if you're home all day and you have little kids. It's very easy to do that. So my encouragement would be just to do something to fill yourself with the gospel, because when your heart's overflowing with the gospel, it's a lot easier to do that with your kids. So whether that is memorizing verses for yourself or reading the Bible for yourself, or there's lots of good kids music that is straight scripture. And I think that's probably the easiest place to start, because you play it for everyone and then you memorize the verses, your kids memorize the verses, it pops into their heads. You have conversations about it, because I know my kids, there's lots of verses we've memorized with songs. And so when they're trying to remind them, like, you need to be kind, or you need to count your brother more important than yourself, like they go through the songs in their head. And there's lots of value to that. And just know that it's going to be hard. And everything with Jesus makes you uncomfortable and hard, and that's okay. I think we tell our kids that all the time. Like, it's hard to be kind. It's hard to love your brother. Like, that's not easy, but you can't do it without Jesus. So just ask him for the help and he'll give it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Dalton, what about you?
Yeah. I would say that as dads, we're tasked with leading our families. I think the statistics are staggering on the significance and importance of dads being involved actively. So if this is something that's important to you and you feel like you're not hitting the mark, then start hitting it, or at least attempting to hit it. Because if it is important to you, it's probably not going to work if you're not leading the charge. Yeah. The statistics would back that up. And I think as men, I'll tell you, talking stereotypes, I think when we do stuff, we want to do it right and well, and we want it to work. And I think we can get easily frustrated when things don't. But I think you need to go into it recognizing that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be messy, like we talked about earlier. And that's okay. And I think, again, as men, it's hard for us to show weakness and failure. But modeling that for our kids is really important, because how often, we all fail every day, but our little kids especially, they make mistakes and they don't do things right. But them seeing, okay, dad messed up, he's still trying, he's asking for forgiveness. Right. Okay, I don't need to be perfect for Jesus to love me or for me to be worthy or anything like that. So yeah, just if it is important to you, which hopefully it is, start behaving like it is.
Yeah. Thanks. Well said by both you guys. And I know you guys are a little bit more on the inside, so you know this, but talking about these sorts of things and trying to cultivate this in our families at our church is hugely important. In fact, it's one of our all church goals for this next year is to really lean into this and say, we're always looking to do this, but we believe that this is such a significant thing. Not everybody's at the stage where they have kids in the home, but when we do, for us as a church community to say, man, we are looking at our greatest God-given opportunity to evangelize and disciple right here. Yeah. And so what we're talking about right here, God willing, will be something that's fruitful for anybody listening to this. We do post these podcasts every 2 weeks, and so we'll be back with another one in 2 weeks, but love to have your feedback on this one. If you have comments, questions, if you have a resource, if you have follow-up or things that you want to ask, or if you're just going to now look for the Sweaneys between services on Sundays and be like, when can I grab them and ask some questions? That'd be great. But we post these podcasts on our website, lbf.church, on YouTube, and you can find them there. We have lots of other ones in the past that we've done. Thank you both so much for coming and just sharing in the middle of the journey, in the middle of the messy journey of looking to follow Jesus well. I appreciate both of you so much. And thanks so much for those of you that took time to watch and to listen. And we'll see you with a new episode in 2 weeks.